And in this week's episode, I'm doing something a little different than I usually do. I'm pulling back the curtain and sharing my 3 biggest mistakes that I made when I was first starting out building this business. And here's why I'm sharing this, because I wish more than anything that I could wave a magic wand and go back in time and tell that Melanie how to prevent those mistakes from happening. Welcome back to In Mel's Mind, where we talk all things marketing, branding, mindset, and growing your small business. So I'm sharing this with you today in hopes that if you're growing your small business right now, or you're in the beginning stages and you feel lost and confused and overwhelmed, you can learn from these mistakes that I made and hopefully avoid them altogether. Okay, mistake number 1. I started my business when I was 28 years old, around there, I think 28, 27, something like that. And before that time, I had spent my entire life working for people. So I would go to work, I would get pay stubs, I would file my taxes at the end of the year, I would get a refund. That's it. My financial literacy was at a 0 when I started my business, but it didn't matter because I was a girl with a dream. I wanted to start my own marketing agency and I was going to do it come hell or high water. And that was enough. No big deal. Then tax time came around and I gave all my stuff, everything that I could. First of all, let's just say keep good books, because even though I registered my business as a solopreneur, I had no idea. So I just started a spreadsheet and kind of was writing things down haphazardly, thinking that that's all you had to do. But also, what I really wanted to talk to you about, the biggest mistake, was that when I got my assessment back, I owed $4,000 to the government. So my heart sank, and I remember just being so massively confused that I said to my accountant, "You mean that's my return, right? That's what I'm going to get back." "No, that's what you owe the government." "But wait, I've never owed the government anything. What do you mean? They usually just give me money. What are you talking about? Like, how could you not know that?" Maybe you're thinking that, or maybe you're like, "Oh my gosh, maybe this is news to you." I just want you to know that's where I was. And so luckily I was resourceful enough to write a couple emails to all my clients, to my client list, which was very small at the time, and offer them these packages that I had created really quickly to design things for them. And I was able to make that money relatively quickly and pay the government what they needed. But it didn't come without a whole bunch of crying at night, scared, listening to people who were telling me that, okay? I also had family members in my ear saying, "Well, how could you not know that? Are you stupid?" Having all of this around me when I was just a girl with a dream made it very heavy, and it was really hard. And the one thing I can say is, I don't know how I did it, but I persevered. I kept going. I believed that I was able to get through this. So my lesson, the lesson in this story, what I would love if I could wave a magic wand and go back in time and speak to Melanie back then, I would say, Melanie, talk to an accountant and book a consultation and ask them the questions that you need to ask so that you are not thrown off at the end of the year. Just know your stuff. And I have to say, a few years after that, maybe 6 years ago now, I incorporated. And guess what the first thing I did was? After I incorporated my business, I went straight to my accountant. And we had an hour-long meeting where I asked every question I could think of so that I would never get into the same situation again. One more thing that I want to say about getting an accountant or understanding your financial responsibility is if you don't have the money for a consult, or if you're the accountants that you want to use are charging for consults and you don't have the money, I understand that fully. I live in Ontario, Canada, and there are so many free resources that they offer small businesses, and you can call them up and they'll give you free advice. They'll tell you things that you need to know. So if you're not ready to sit down with an actual accountant, look for free resources that will help you. Mistake number 2 is not having a mentor or North Star. So here's my story with finding a North Star. Way back in the day, I stopped drinking and I had been sober for a few months. And I had seen Dax Shepard on a talk show, I think it was Ellen, and his words really hit home with me. And I just remember thinking, I really would love to have this guy in my ear. So I figured out podcasts just to have his voice in my ear. And I found it and I listened to it daily, and it was a lot of help and it helped me tremendously, and he's great. So what ended up happening was I was getting all these suggestions for business podcasts. One by one, I started finding these women who were just a few steps ahead of me, and I would listen to their podcasts and my mind was blown. Things I had never known, they were being presented to me. And all of a sudden my life filled with opportunity and a whole game plan was being opened up to me, things that I had never thought of doing before. I was being taught how to market myself on social media, how to build an email list, how to show up, connect. All of these things were happening, and I cannot tell you how much of a difference that made. Number one, it made me feel so much less lonely. Number two, it gave me actionable steps. And here's the most important part about all of this. These women that I found who were just a few steps ahead, these are people who had just broken through the 6-figure year, who I could look to as aspirational, because if they did it and they're talking about how they did it, then I can replicate those steps and do it too. And that meant the world to me, because before I found that, I was really depressed. I was constantly questioning myself. I had no clue where to start when it came to getting out there. I was so lucky because my business was surviving in those first few years through word of mouth. My business was just referrals in those first few years, and luckily it was enough to just feed my family, like to keep me afloat. But that's all it did. But anyway, let's get back to this mistake number 2. I wish I could go back in time and tell myself, Melanie, find your North Star. And mistake number 3 is not setting up systems and routines in your business right off the bat. When I first started my business, I was very used to the grind and this very rigid way of life. When I started my business, I will never forget, February 12th, 2012, and I woke up at like 7 and I didn't have to go to work. I didn't have to hustle to get to the bus. I didn't have to take the subway. All of a sudden I had this freedom that I had never had before. I didn't realize that, whoa, when you're running your own business, especially in the beginning, a lot of it is going to be behind a computer setting up what you need to set up, especially if you're in the creative field. So what I wish I could go back and tell myself was, Melanie, set up systems, set up boundaries, and set up structures. Now, my Google Calendar is filled from 5 a.m. to 4 p.m. every single day. So here's my suggestion to you. When you're first starting out, you might have clients that are spread out. You might think, okay, great, I have a client Monday, I have a client Wednesday, I have a client Thursday. So then all of my time is now free between then. And if that's how you want to structure your business, go for it. I'm not here to tell you how to run your business. I'm just going to tell you what worked for me. And what worked for me was saying, these are the things I have to do in my business in order to succeed. And then what boundaries am I going to put into place in my life that allow me to fully focus on what I need to focus on? Set boundaries around your time, respect your time, and create systems and workflows that allow you to do things more efficiently. You're not going to get it perfect. And I would definitely tell myself, don't try to get it perfect because you're going to rearrange this a million times over. But at least start the ball rolling. Like start saying, how do I want my days to look? How do I want this to play out? That's what it is. So those are the 3 biggest mistakes that I made when I was starting out. They're literally the ones that stay top of mind for me. The ones where I just wish I could go back in time and be like, hey, Melanie, just to let you know, ABC. And just kind of whisper in my ear so that I didn't have to make those mistakes and go through all of that turmoil that I went through early on. To recap, the mistakes are, number 1, not getting an accountant early enough, not speaking to an accountant, not getting clear on what my financial responsibilities were as a business owner. Mistake number 2, not finding a mentor or North Star or someone that I could have in my ear every single day that inspired me and made me feel like everything was possible and everything was okay. And mistake number 3, not setting up systems early in the game, not setting boundaries, not respecting the fact that I was building a business and focusing on those systems and prioritizing things that were very appealing to my ego instead. And that is it, my friends. Thanks for watching another episode of In Mel's Mind, and here's to building a business that feels good and truly works for you. See you next time. Hi, and oh god, almost fell off. Hi there, and a genie. Let me do that again. Grown leaps and bounds.